I'm Tyler, and today it's time to bust out that calculator app because we're talking about game equations. So, you do your YouTube chores down below, and I'll hit that intro to take us down the warp pipe. Okay, so what do I mean by game equations exactly? Well, the different pieces that exist within a game that explain why we like what we like and why we want to play what we're playing, or dislike what we're playing. But for me, it's really coming down to a bunch of core components that can get broken down really easily. We're going to start off here with the first one, though, which is the main kind of driving force I find for defining what game that you're playing, and that's going to be the objectives. So, as we have for objectives, there are going to be a short list here. Going down, we're going to start off with goal-oriented games. So what do I mean by goal-oriented games? Well, it's a game where you have a specific defined objective, in this case, that is a goal. So you're looking to collect all of the coins, get to the end of the level, beat the boss. It's really clear and defined, and most games do fit into this category. But at the end of the day, it's something that is really specific and you can really nail down and almost like a checklist, see exactly what you need to do. Moving on from there, we're going to have score. So this is not the most common nowadays, as most games have moved away from using this. But with score, you're looking at something where your objective is to get the highest score, or in the case of a golf game, the lowest score. But these obviously fit into the old arcade games, and even some stuff like the original Mega Man or even Super Mario will have a score system in there. It's not quite as relevant in those games as it would be with something like Asteroids or Space Invaders. But personally, one of my most favorite is Geometry Wars. That can be used as a more modern example of something that is score-based that worked really well. Obviously, Tetris is the prime example here, with it constantly getting re-released all the time. Score games never went away. They just got refined and people realized you can't do much better than the classics. So moving on from there, we have the next type of game that tends to go together with a lot of the other ones, but that's collection. So as I mentioned, with goal, your goal might be to collect a certain number of items. Well, that obviously fits into this category, and a lot of these can be combined in most cases, and most games will use a variety of them in different ways, but the collectathon is a mainstay for a specific reason, and that's because people love collecting things. You love collecting different items of loot in Diablo, or all the jiggies in Banjo-Kazooie, or all of the stars or moons in Mario. Moving on from that, we have the experience. So that's going to be something that's a bit more nebulous. This one is a lot harder to describe on paper or even speaking, but when you play something that's an experience game, you'll know what I'm talking about. Great examples of this for me would be something like Minecraft or anything where you're really there to experience a different world. No Man's Sky comes to mind. Yeah, you still might have goals and everything, but really your main reason for playing the game is to exist in this different world or in this different role. Right now, I'm playing Yes, Your Grace on the Xbox Series X, and that is a phenomenal experience game. It's just you being a knight, and sorry, not a knight, a king, and making all your kingly decisions. Moving on from that, we're going to get to the what I would consider the most common to be lumped in with goal-oriented stuff nowadays, and that's going to be the story. So this is when you're playing a game primarily to experience the story of it. There's a lot of great examples of this. PlayStation does a phenomenal job with their exclusives, and Xbox actually does a pretty good job with this as well. If you jump into any the Last of Us, Uncharted, even Gears of War, they're going to have a lot of story and a lot of cutscenes involved along the way. So you're getting this kind of awesome story the same way you would from a TV show or a movie, but it's kind of sprinkled throughout the game that you're playing. And obviously, the last one here I've left out, but it's one of the biggest ones, and that's competition. This goes all the way back to Street Fighter 2, or even back to any Pong, actually. One of the primary games, Pong, is a competition game. You're trying to beat the other person. Nowadays, that's obviously grown into Fortnite and, like, back in the day a bit, Counter-Strike, which was my jam. But it's really a mainstay. I don't tend to partake too much in these other than racing games nowadays, but I'm super stoked for Destruction All Stars on PlayStation 5 when that comes out in February. So I'll definitely be dipping my toes back into the competition ring here and there, but I don't take it too seriously anymore. I've gotten too old for it. I know I'm not going to be the best player. I just try to be as good as I can be, but without being the best player, it kind of deters me from playing a lot of them, unless they're just fun with some friends. We're going to get to what is the most important, I would say, in terms of figuring out maybe when you're going to play something or if you're going to save that experience. And that's going to be the game structure. A lot of times, game structure can inform why you want to play a certain type of game. So, one that is kind of, I would say, the least used nowadays, and that's going to be Hub World. So, Demon Souls, that just came out on PlayStation 5, is a great example of this. Something like Mario 64 would also fit into this category as well. So, Mario 64 also having kind of the playground aesthetic to it, but when you jump back and you get to your level select screen, so to speak, you're actually in a hub world where you can explore around, do different things, find secrets, and that's something that also exists in Demon Souls. You have the main nexus that you jump into these other areas from, and they're self-contained, but you have a hub world that you kind of keep going back to. And it's something that's not mentioned very often and is one of my favorite ways to play a game, and actually is a nice balance between something that's open world, but also something that's not as daunting to jump into, the level structure. So this is the most easy to understand because most people have probably played a game that is structured using levels. So you're structuring something like Super Mario World or Donkey Kong Country or any plethora of most games, at least back in the 8-bit, 16-bit era, and even into the 32-bit and 64-bit era with the PlayStation and the N64, you still had a lot of games with levels. It's the easiest to comprehend and the kind of most basic that we can outline here. Open world games. These are the most common games that you'll find for big budget AAA games nowadays. So if you look at something like Breath of the Wild, or if you look at Ghost of Tsushima, or even the new Halo is supposed to be kind of open world. And these games are big, they're expansive, they suck up a lot of your time just moving around the world and exploring it, and that's cool. And there's a lot of reasons to go with an open world game design, but for me, it's not necessarily the one that's the most inviting because a lot of these games require a lot of time out of you. The next one up here is going to be one that I kind of struggle with putting on here, but I think really deserves its own spot, and that's Playground. So something like a Splinter Cell Conviction did a really good job of having this kind of main objective in the area, main goal, but the area was kind of yours to explore. Hitman is a fantastic franchise that does this perfectly, I would say, where you have a goal, you have these side objectives or side goals, but really it's the level, although it is broken up that way, is more of a playground. It's not really linear, and there isn't really a point A to point B. You're meant to feel and explore your way around and figure things out for yourself. With the examples here, we're going to bring those games in. Now, you have what I would say is, for me, a classic, and I am completely subjective here because it was the first game that I owned myself. And that's going to be Super Mario World. So, with Super Mario World, we're going to have a game that has a goal oriented objective. You're trying to beat the level, save the princess, move on, collect all the coins, etc. But it also has, like I said, collect all the coins, a collection element. This is where we get into, as I mentioned, a lot of combinations here. So you're not going to have one specific, but sometimes you play it for the goal, sometimes you play it for the collection. Moving on to the next game here with the original Halo, that's going to be, at least in my opinion, kind of an easy coin flip where you're either playing it for the story. Yeah, there is goals, but really the story was one of the main drives of this game, to be Master Chief and jump into those combat boots, run around, blast guys. Also, the competition side. That's something that you can never discredit here. And a lot of people play Halo specifically for the multiplayer, especially the more modern, up-to-date ones on the Master Chief Collection. But with the original one, that was also a really big draw. It was one of the first games where I remember taking consoles over to friends' places and hooking up on a LAN and having a LAN party. What I consider my personal favorite SimCity, I know it's often overlooked, SimCity 3000 is going to be one of those games that give goals to you, but also it's really an experience game as well. And this is what I was talking about, kind of like with Minecraft, but you're in this game to be a mayor, be a city builder. And you have these goals of obviously growing your population, making money, not going bankrupt, improving your city, and dealing with ordinances and petitioners, which 3000 did a really, really good job of having those extra things kind of pop in compared to 2000, I felt. So getting to the next component, which is the structure here, for Mario World, we're going to get into what is obviously a level structure. You're picking levels, going level by level. You don't have to beat everyone, but it's obviously a lot of fun, and you're missing out on some of the experience if you don't. So it's a pretty straightforward, classic kind of experience there. Halo, though, moving on to that, is a little bit harder to nail down. It's, for me, I decided to categorize it as hub world because you have the main island, but then you're breaking off from that main island into specific story sequences and specific kind of levels and tunnels almost that tunnel you through to an objective and then tunnel you back. So that for me was what Halo really broke down to, especially once the flood gets involved. You tend to get into these kind of corridors and moving around, and it's not as open, but then you break out into the kind of the island area, what I like to call the hub area or hub world of Halo, and that allowed you to kind of run around and experience more. But let me know what you think down below, and obviously this is a conversation that can get continued because the next one is also really simple and straightforward, but SimCity, like many of the simulation builder games, it's going to be a playground because it gives you a plot of land. You can form it yourself and terraform everything, put trees where you want before you get going. But once you get going, it's just a plot of land for you to do what you want with. So you can experiment around, you can have a lot of fun with it, and it can kill a lot of time, but I totally understand how a lot of people may not feel this is the game for you, but if you don't play a lot of video games, you might find yourself in a boat where you want to jump into something that's a playground game like this, or even Minecraft. Modern examples being Planet Coaster, City Skylines, or my personal recommendation if you haven't tried one out before, Theme Hospital guys went and made Two Point Hospital. Two Point Hospital is a great jumping in point, I find, because it gives you the ropes better than anything else I've seen. But that's a topic for a completely different video. So, with that said, we're going to move on, close up for today, but I'll give you a little hint. Thursday, I'm going to be dropping another video talking about some of my favorite things. So what I've decided to do is break this down. We'll get the game language, where to start, or the what I'd change videos on Tuesdays. And then every Thursday, because it's a lot easier, I'm going to throw out a My Thoughts video. So the first one coming up this week is going to be about the raids that have recently come out for a lot of games. Ghost of Tsushima, Borderlands 3, and obviously going way, way back to what my original experience was, which was Molten Core in World of Warcraft. But until then, thanks for watching. Make sure to check in and do your YouTube chores down below, but I'll see you on Thursday for the My Thoughts Thursday video.